What you're doing in that moment when you can look somebody in the eye and be present for that conversation, you're building relationship collateral. And that's so much more important than just doing a lot of work.
Yes.
Because when you really think about what's important to you, what you want to be known for, don't you want to be known as someone who cared and listened and worked with people instead of just being dismissive or preoccupied all the time?
Welcome to Gap to Gig, the show for dads navigating the in-between season when work, identity, and priorities start asking different questions. Here we talk about what that season looks like and how to move through it with intention. I'm your host, Michael Jacobs, and today's guest is Carol Enneking. She brings a perspective I think a lot of dads will recognize immediately. Carol spent decades inside high responsibility corporate roles, including serving as global VP of talent and leadership. From the outside, it looked like success, big roles, big scope, big impact. But behind the scenes, she started noticing something that didn't sit right. The people who looked the most successful were often the most exhausted. Instead of chasing better balance, Carol began questioning the idea of balance itself. That work became the foundation of her book, The Rebalancing Act, and her work today helping high achievers pursue success that actually holds up in real life. Carol, I'm excited to chat with you today. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad
Thank
you're
you.
here.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I appreciate it. So I want to start where I think a lot of dads who are listening are probably settling in right now. Not in crisis necessarily, but not fully at ease either. And
Yeah.
you've said to me that work life balance is a myth and that rebalancing is a skill. When dads hear that for the first time, what do you want them to understand about the difference?
I think the difference that's most critical to understand is that we need to stop chasing this ideal where everything's going to make perfect sense because
Okay.
it constantly outdistances us. And then the minute you get into perfect alignment, something's going to change. And so when I've worked with people to instead think about that rebalancing act as the agility that it takes in the moment to get back to center, to get back to what matters. That tends to resonate more with people because that's something you can do. So that when you have those moments where you feel like things are out of kilter, instead of saying, well, it should be this way, it should be this way, why is it not? You're thinking, okay, what is the change that I need to make in this moment right now to move me in the right direction? And it is a constant, it's a constant force in our life. And so when we focus on that, it tends to reduce the frustration of feeling like we're constantly missing this goal of being in sync perfectly.
Absolutely. So to me, it sounds like a shift in perspective. Would that
Mhm.
be
It's
the
that's probably you just summed up all my work in one sentence, but yes, and it's how you do that and when you do that and knowing when you need to do that that makes all the difference.
right? And that changes perspective. It's not a permanent thing. Your perspective is always changing, right? As you
Right.
get more experience and you find what does work for you, what doesn't work for you,
Yeah.
you have to continue to reevaluate, continue to look at it from your current perspective to say,
Yes.
what is working for me, what's not working for me. Is that the sort of the background to support the work that you do is like,
It is. It is because we are growing and changing as are the people around us all the time. So your life is different today than it was 2 weeks ago or 2 years ago, as are your kids, your spouse, your significant others. We're all growing and changing. And so that's the thing is when we sit here thinking things ought to be static and ought to make sense, that's based on probably how life was yesterday and not how things are right now. So it's much more about that flexibility. I remember early in my career, I kept thinking, wow, it would be great if I just had a really stable job
yeah,
and every day was the same. And then over time I realized I would be bored silly if that were my job. And so instead of regretting the flexibility or wishing it away, I learned to use that as an asset and to embrace the fact that I'm flexible and I can respond to ever changing situations. Use that as a strength. And that does involve a change in perspective and it involves a continual process that I like to call rebalancing.
That's so smart to frame it, frame your changing your perspective as an asset, right? Of
Yeah.
like, because it's so easy to get stuck in the moment, right? And
Yes,
to
it
not
is.
look at the bigger picture.
Yes.
And you have this asset available to you, right? Of like taking a step back and looking at it through your current lens to say, is this what works for me or not? And it's like putting that asset to work for you,
Yes.
right? It's like when they say you earn some money and you go to invest it, you're putting that money to work for you, but it is going to grow for you, hopefully grow for you over time as you invest in however you invest it,
Yeah.
right?
It's a great metaphor.
It's the
Yeah,
same for your life, I
it
presume, right?
is.
It's like you have to, because it's an asset, you can invest it in yourself to find the things that make you happy, fulfilled, you know, not live in this cone of regret that we tend to get ourselves into when we're stuck in the moment.
It's funny, we talk about mindset a lot, but I don't know that we really understand just how sophisticated a machine our brain is because our thought process, it whatever we are planting in our conscious mind tends to start becoming our unconscious reality, right? So if we're constantly saying, I'm stressed, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel good, I hate this, that's what's getting into our brain and that's becoming our default pattern. And when we can hold thoughts that will serve us well and learn to control those negative spirals, we are far more fulfilled. And there's a whole lot of brain science behind this. But, I went from thinking, oh my gosh, why is every day so different? Why does it bring such different challenges? Why is it so stressful? And then I started thinking, but the fact that I can shift and move and have this variety every day could be a source of strength if I were to think about it that way. And then I entered into a career where I had to be flexible. If I didn't have that flexibility, I never would have been successful. And so it went from, I'm gonna test out this theory and plant this positive thought in my mind and see if it helps. It went from there to really informing how I approached my career, my life, and trying to use that as an asset instead of dreading the craziness that each day would bring.
And so I imagine you must have felt much better in doing that, right? Like, but
Yeah.
you had to get started
It
in.
had to get started, and by the way, because things are always changing and new stressors emerge, it's a constant reminder process that, okay, I can still handle this. I can still take the next step. I just had something catastrophic happen. Okay, what do I do now? You know,
Right,
because every the more you live, the more opportunities you have, the more chances you'll have for things to go wrong, and the
right,
more you'll have an opportunity to practice this.
right.
So there are times when it's been really easy to remember that, and there've been times when I've had to get out of my own head and stop and go, okay,
Yeah,
let's get back to these more normal thoughts and a more normal basis of living.
right. And I imagine then between those 2 sort of extremes of, like, being on top of it and kind of getting inside your own head and not being able to get that perspective, that a there's also a risk of imbalance in between those 2 extremes. And what I'm thinking of is, like, I know right now, a lot of dads I talk to, they're grateful for the careers that they have,
Mhm.
right? Because especially in the economy we're in right now,
Right.
there's and the job market is become a lot more challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so they're grateful for the careers they have, but they're uneasy about how much space in their lives the work is taking up, right? They're afraid to not prioritize work or not even necessarily not prioritize work, but they're afraid to step away from work for a moment to take care of things outside of work
Yeah.
because they know that it's going to be tough to replace the job they currently have.
Yeah.
How do you kind of help people tell the difference between a demanding season like that where it's maybe you got a lot going on at work, maybe it's busy season, you're an accountant, maybe it's just
Yeah.
that time of year where sales are spiking and you just have to do more for work. How do you tell people how do you help people tell the difference between a demanding season and just a misaligned life?
Oh my, there's so much to unpack here. There's so many reasons that you can get to that point, right? And it's funny, I just had a newsletter this week for my community and it's it was I think the title was you can be overwhelmed and excited at the same time or exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. Those two things can coexist
Right.
and that's okay and that's probably going to be expected and here's why. When you're ambitious and capable and smart and dependable, the kind of people who have jobs, those skills are your strengths, but at the same time, they can start to become weaknesses if they're overused and you don't know when to dial them back. And so the problem that we have many times is that we take on more than we should. We take on things that probably would be just as well done by somebody else. Maybe it's something we like to do. Maybe it's something that we feel like, well, I can probably do this quicker and easier than somebody else, or I don't have the time to teach somebody else how to do it. So we take on all this work over time and then we wonder how we got so overwhelmed.
Right.
And so when you talk about the difference between a demanding season and a life that's out of balance, I think the question is how long of a period of time are you existing in that demanding overload? And so I like to think about it like a car. If you get in a car and you constantly accelerate and you just put the pedal to the metal and floor it,
Yep.
over time, you're gonna crash, you're gonna run out of gas, something terrible is gonna happen. You're gonna burn out the engine. And in this case, we're the car, right? So we can't just accelerate constantly, constantly, constantly
Right.
without knowing when to back off, when to hit the brake, when to take the car in for an oil change, or maybe in your case, it's a day off or a massage. You need that preventive maintenance. And Stephen, the late great Stephen Covey used to talk about sharpening the saw. And so what can happen over time, and the analogy is that if you go out to chop wood and you've got a sharp saw and you chop some wood down, and then you keep going every day and you chop more wood and you chop more wood, but you never take the time out to sharpen the saw, you will work harder to get that same amount of work done because your saw blade isn't sharp anymore.
Right.
And that's like us. And so there are all these analogies out there, but it's different to have a season like, okay, I've got a big project at work. We've got a deadline approaching. The next 2 weeks, I need to just focus on that a lot, and I might miss junior's baseball game or dance recital. You know, that's one thing, but when you are doing that for months on end or years on end, and you wake up one day and you're like, "Wow, 2 years just went by." That is a life that's out of alignment.
Yep.
And so it's not that you're not gonna have seasons where you really put that pedal to the metal, but you've got to know when to back off. And a lot of times it involves taking a good, long, hard look in the mirror to see what it is that you've taken on that you probably shouldn't be doing. Because when we take on so much, wanting to be 100% productive or not waste any time, or we tell ourselves all these stories about how much we can take on, but when we fill ourselves so full of things to do, we don't have any time left to be fulfilled, and
Yep.
we don't have any time left for the inevitable curveballs that are going to come our way. I'm in the stage, my kids are grown now. Used to be that you never knew when you'd have a child sick or something come up with school or whatever. But in this case, now for me, it's more about being a caregiver for aging parents.
Right.
And so I'm so thankful that, hey, when my mom fell, I could drop everything and be at the hospital with her. And that's because I've worked to have some margin in my life where I had some white space that I could realign, rearrange, because when things like that happen, you don't have a choice. I mean, you've got to be there. But we tend to have so much on our plates already, and then the worst is I told you I could unpack a lot here, but it's always interesting to me when people wear busyness as a badge of honor. "I'm
Yes.
so busy, I'm so busy, I'm too busy, I'm so busy. I can't see you, I can't go for coffee, I can't have lunch with you, I can't do this for the kids because 'cause I'm just so busy." And they think that it first of all, it comes off to the other person like, what I'm doing is more important than what you want me to do, and that's not a very good sign of respect. So there's that aspect to it, but it always begs the question to me, are you even working on the right things in the right ways, or have you created a life without boundaries so that you don't do a good job of prioritizing what's important and knowing when to let things go?
Right.
So there's just a lot to that, and I think it's real easy for us to get in this cycle of, "Oh, I'm getting recognition at work, I'm getting good bonuses, I'm getting promoted, I'm getting, accolades from the boss," whatever it is. We can let that motivate us excessively, or we feel like we've gotta keep proving ourselves because 'cause we're only as good as the most recent accolade. But when we can say, "I work hard, I do a good job, and I am worthy of taking a break
Yeah.
and realigning things," many times people, when they finally do that, they're very surprised that their bosses are so supportive
Right.
because they see it, but they can't necessarily help you get to that point, but they want you to be at your best. They don't want you to be stressed out, burned out, exhausted. And I've been there. I was that type A worker for a while and was constantly having to say, "Okay, am I out of alignment here? And what do I need to do to
Yeah.
regain that alignment?"
Absolutely. There's so many things that I kind of want to highlight that you just said, like margin, right? You talked about building in margin to your life, and this idea of just because you're so busy doesn't mean it's the right solution, right? And so it's
Yeah,
like busyness does not necessarily equal productivity, right?
absolutely.
You're not
And
just because you're busy doesn't mean you're productive. Doesn't mean
and
you're
didn't your mother ever say, "Just because you can doesn't mean you should"? I mean, there's
exactly
it's a pretty
right,
profound statement when you stop to
right,
think about it.
exactly. And it gets me thinking of like we can replace paychecks, right? There are jobs out there and we have to earn a living, right? We have to be able to support ourselves and those we care about. And yeah, it might not be easy to do a one for one replacement of the income that you have, right?
Yeah.
But what's a lot more difficult than replacing an income is replacing time with those you care about. You
Right.
cannot get back those dance recitals. You cannot get back those ball games that your kids played. You cannot get back those meal times, those dinners where you guys just cracking up, making jokes with each other, and just building this bond. Right? You
Yeah,
can't. Those are irreplaceable.
they are.
Paychecks are replaceable. Right? And the only way to you're not striving for perfection here, from what I gather from what you're saying. Right? It's not about making sure you are 100%, every time your kids have an activity, you are there. And like you might have a work trip and you just cannot get to a practice or a game. And
Right.
that's okay.
That's
The
okay.
key is to find a way to have both coexist in a way that is healthy for yourself and those that you care about. Not that one completely overtakes the other. Your goal is not for a perfect attendance record,
Right.
right? Your goal is to show up and be active and be present in those individual moments, but you have to be able to show up to both, to everything, right? Like
Yeah.
you just have
And
to find what is the right alignment for you, right? Which I think goes
yeah.
back to the idea of like rebalancing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny because now my kids are grown and gone, but I asked them a question. I asked each one of them separately, "Did you ever feel like there was a time when my work was more important than you?" And we have good relationships. I'm very close with my children. They're 26 and 28. And I know they would answer honestly, and they said, "No." They said, "We knew your job was really important to you, but you also made us feel important when you were with us." And the reason I want to share that is that I was not perfect. I did miss some practices. I did miss other things occasionally. I had a great team of other parents who would fill in, send pictures and videos if I couldn't be at something. I didn't always have the most gourmet lunch for my kids or the most amazing dinner, but we sat around the table and we had conversation.
Yeah.
And so they remember the big things. They don't remember these little things.
Right.
And I hope that gives people hope that you don't have to be there, you don't have to have a 100% track record, but you wanna have a good mix and be able to be present for the ones who matter.
Right. Absolutely. I think what I've learned as my kids get older is that moments matter, right? And you
Yeah.
don't know when those moments are going to occur, right?
Yeah.
It could be a car ride to an activity. It could be while you're making dinner together or while you're, eating a meal together, right? My kids seem to remember specific moments.
Yeah.
They don't remember whether my paycheck went through, right?
Yeah.
Every Friday. They don't remember like what I did at work on a given Tuesday. But they
Yeah.
might remember this one conversation we had 3 Tuesdays ago that was or 3 years ago on a Tuesday that, was just the funniest thing that ever happened, right? Or was just something more memorable.
Well,
And
and I bet you weren't on your cell phone in those conversations either, and you weren't multitasking, or I like to call it task switching because it's really hard to do all that stuff simultaneously. But,
right,
you know, being present has sort of gone out the window with all this technology. We're always on. We're in 14 text conversations, exchanging emails with somebody else, have somebody else calling. It's crazy. And I just saw something the other day. It was a girl, probably about my one of my children's ages, and she was saying what I miss about the '90s moms, or why I'm jealous of '90s moms, which that was me. She said, "My mother was always present with me in conversations. She didn't have a smartphone distracting her. She wasn't sitting there looking at her phone while she was talking to me."
right.
And I think about, the pressure that we're under with all this technology and everything, and it's like, "Put the phone down." My daughter likes to say, "Hang up and hang out." So, but it's hard because people are always feeling like, "Oh, I can text you anytime." And then we feel like we've gotta text them right back, and it's like, "No, no, we don't."
Right, right. What's gonna happen if you wait an hour or 12 hours
Yeah,
to
yeah,
respond? 99 out of 100 times, it's not gonna make a difference, right? And it is so difficult to put the phone down sometimes, right?
yeah.
Like,
It
even
is.
if it's not work related, right? It's just we might just be scrolling through
Scrolling.
social media or looking at
Mhm.
pictures or whatever it may be. It is difficult to do,
Yeah,
but to become conscious conscious of when you do that is so important,
it
right?
is.
Like, it's difficult to do, but you have to just recognize it once, then it
Yeah,
recognize it a second time, and now it becomes more of a habit and a pattern that you can follow so that you can be more present. I'm certainly not perfect when it comes to it. I'm certainly check my phone around my kids. I think as they get older, it becomes even more difficult because they've got their own phones and now they're getting just as distracted.
yeah.
And, you know, they follow the behaviors that we model for them, not the words that we use. So if we
That's
say,
right.
put your phone down,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's
But
true.
we're on our phones, they're not gonna listen, right? But if our phones are down and they're on their phones, and I say, "Hey, let's put our phones down, let's just hang out or have a conversation," whatever it may be, they're a lot more likely to follow
Yeah.
that lead because my phone is down.
Yeah, and I think I'm of the age where we gave our kids smartphones because we didn't realize just how dangerous it could be and all the downsides of it, and I think now parents know better and they're starting to think about, "Do I want my kid to have a smartphone at an early age?" I know that's a big debate right now, and it's a tough call. I remember I was in a meeting, gosh, this was at least 10 years ago. I'm sure it was more than 10 years ago, but I was really distracted on my phone, and I had an employee say, "You know what? That's really bothering me. And it makes it look like what you're doing on your phone is more important than what we're talking about in our meeting." That hit me hard,
Yep.
and I was very mindful after that, and then I got to the point where I started like, when I was the one leading the meetings, I would say, "Let's all be off our phones. If you have an emergency, if you have something and you need to have your phone out, let us know and we'll understand, but don't just use your phone to keep doing work, because what you're saying to everybody else is that what you're doing is more important than what we're all talking about." And we tend to lose perspective so easily and get into these situations where we don't have proper boundaries anymore, whether it's technology, whether it's just the way we take on work. But I think that's what ends up overloading us as much as anything. Just taking it on because we can, even though we probably shouldn't.
Right. I love that idea of, or not the, I should say, I love the idea of, I appreciate that your colleague was like, your phone is looking like it's more important than me. And it
Yeah. I
reminds
was
me of
kept to hear.
like what we were talking about of like moments matter, right? Of like, even if it's not at home, even at work,
Mhm.
putting your phone down to be in that moment because you only have so much time with your coworkers to get your work done. Whatever's on your phone is still going to be there
Yeah,
after that conversation's over,
that's right.
right? It's not going anywhere.
And there are techniques and tools you can use on your phone to flag messages, pin texts. You can do things to help you remember to come back to it later. So
Right.
take advantage of those tools instead of feeling like, "Oh, I better do this now before I forget." I think that's where a lot of us get into trouble,
Right.
myself
Right.
included.
Yeah. And that's to say, like, we still have to give ourselves grace. Like, we're not going to be perfect at it.
Yeah.
It is near impossible to never look at our phones when we're talking to somebody else, right? And sometimes we're using our phones as we're talking to somebody else because we're referencing something or
That's right, we're looking it up.
whatever it may be, right? But it's like we're not going to be perfect at it. I think the idea here, from what you're saying, is like be cognizant of it when you can,
Yeah,
right? And then you can start to build up some strength in that area of being able to put your phone aside because you recognize, oh yeah, I'm in the moment right now.
yeah,
I'm going to focus on who is in front of me instead of what is in front of me, what this phone is, right? Like I'll put that aside. And the more I do that, the easier it becomes because it becomes more of a habit, it becomes more of this pattern that I can continue to do,
yeah.
right?
And it's and what you're doing in that moment when you can look somebody in the eye and be present for that conversation, you're building relationship collateral. And that's so much more important than just doing a lot of work.
Yes.
Because when you really think about what's important to you, what you want to be known for, don't you want to be known as someone who cared and listened and worked with people instead of just being dismissive or preoccupied all the time?
Right.
Um,
That's
that's a that's a question I often ask people as we start thinking about that perspective, that thought shift is, what do you want to be known for? What do you want your legacy to be?
right.
And
Absolutely.
if it involves how you want to be known to people, you got to show up in a way that's in alignment with that.
Yeah.
And when you're too preoccupied and distracted, it's really hard to do that.
Absolutely. I love that phrase, relationship collateral, because we're trying to do work that means something to us, right? We're trying to live a life that is meaningful and fulfilling to us.
Yeah.
You know, and the dads that I talk to and work with, it's like we tend to look at work as a means to get to the end, but really what we want to be doing is work that matters to us, meaningful work. And the only way to do the work that means something to you is to build relationships, right?
That's right.
All work essentially comes down to relationships between people, right?
Yeah.
It is very rare you can build a business or get a job without knowing somebody else,
That's right.
right? So you have to build these relationships. And the only way to, or the best way or most effective way to build these relationships, or as you call it, relationship collateral, is to be present in the moment with those people, right?
Because it's building trust.
Yeah,
And when people trust you and you have that relationship, then they can give you the grace when you slip up, when you get on your phone and you say something you wish you wouldn't have or something like that, they're more likely to say, "I can give you some grace on that because I know you and I know your heart and I know where you're coming from and your authenticity shows up."
absolutely. And then with, you know, back to phones for a second of like, phones take up our time and our energy, right?
Oh yeah.
And the more dads I talk to, the more I hear, I don't have enough time, right? There's not enough time in the day.
Yep.
And when I talk to other dads, many of them assume that the answer is better time management, right?
Yeah.
Like that is what it is. Like, I just need to find more time in the day. And
Yeah.
yeah, maybe there's something to do with your phones, maybe it's not. But is that the right place to start? Or is there something somewhere else we should be focused on to kind of live a more aligned life between work and home?
Yeah, I think time management is a symptom of a time management challenge is a symptom of a deeper issue. And so by chasing your calendar, you're not necessarily going to fix that deeper issue. And I
Sure.
think it starts with I think you have to look at your life holistically. So if you think about your life in different areas, you've got work or your vocation, you've got family, you've got social, financial, spiritual, health. I'm forgetting a few, but there's 7 or 8 key aspects to your life.
Sure.
And when you think about, let's say you could rate yourself from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest on how well you're doing in each of those aspects. When you are trying to be a 10 on all of them, that's a recipe for exhaustion and burnout.
Right.
But a lot of times you may be a 10 at work and you're a 2 with your family because work's taking all your energy. Or, you may have a 10 social life, but your financial life's a 2 because you're spending all your money going out every night. And your work
Right.
life might not be so great either. So, it's a balancing act, and what works for you right now may be to try to average about 6 or 7 in all the key areas that are most critical for you right now. And so instead of trying to be 10s everywhere, how does it look to try to balance that out where you've got a reasonable level of satisfaction across many areas of your life instead of just being hyper focused on one area? So I think you have to look at your life that way, and I also think it's important to consider the season of life that you're in.
Yeah.
And by that I mean if you have little children, that's, all the cliches apply because they're true, and, it's the days are long, the years are short. I can say that now, my kids are grown up.
Right.
But when your kids are small, if family time is critical, and I love that so many dads believe that family time is critical. I came from the generation where my dad was not around. He
Yeah.
was traveling and working all the time, and I didn't see him much as a kid. So I love that we've rediscovered that the importance of being there for our children. That's wonderful. But in that stage of your life, maybe you aren't going to be a 10 in the job right now. Maybe you aren't going to get the fastest promotion.
Right.
Now, that said, if the higher priority is that you've got to provide for your family and you've got to earn that promotion and you've got to really give it to work, that's okay. You may not be able to be at every one of the baseball games and practices. It's a trade-off. You don't get to these places of success without sacrifice, but you've gotta know what's most important to you right now in this season, and by the way, that's where rebalancing comes because every season is different, but when you know what's most important, that helps you to make those priority decisions that are most aligned with what's important, and then you can say no from a place of knowledge. So you can start to discern, okay, I could take that on. I'm a CPA. I could be the treasurer of the baseball team or the PTA, but I'm not going to because it's down here and I'm already filled up with these other things. Because you see, when you can say no to something, it gives you the ability to say a stronger yes to something else. And so I think you have to get into that level of detail, not for very long. It doesn't take very long, but you got to clarify what's most important to me. What do I want to be known for? What are the priorities of this season? And where do I need to move things around to be more aligned? And then you can start to figure out what to let go of. And then you can start managing your time well. But if you try to just start with time management, you might not be figuring out the underlying problem is that you're trying to be a 10 to everybody all the time.
Right. Time management is more surface level.
Yeah.
What you really need to do is dig underneath the surface.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how often should we be reviewing our point of view here, our perspective of like where we should be spending our time and how we should be aligning things?
That's a funny question because I think I get asked that a lot, but I think it's different for everybody. I like to say that it's good at least annually to review your goals and your bigger plans. But I think other than the annual goals that you're setting for yourself, which I think is a very good practice, and checking to see if you're making progress on those. I think it's more about when you start feeling out of kilter, when you start feeling like something's off, that's your cue to go back to, okay, what is it that I'm prioritizing again? You start with, what do I want my legacy to be? What's most important in terms of my life values? And then what are my goals? And when you have those goals, it's amazing how you'll work toward getting there. But you might have a lifetime goal list that has 50 things on it. You're not doing them all at once.
Right.
And so the other thing I say when it does come to time management is think about sequencing versus stacking. We tend to stack everything on our to-do list and we put like 3 times more than we can actually accomplish on it. And
Right.
we just pile things on up and down on the list. And if we think about sequencing, what do I need to do right now? What is something I can not do, until 3 years from now? And think about sequencing that out. Have a couple of meaningful goals you're working toward all the time, but don't try to achieve them all right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So on the flip side of that, can you end up over analyzing this? Can you be doing so frequently that you're never actually getting anything done? Or is the risk really just never looking at?
I mean, it would be a nice problem to have to some degree, but I think if you are it's good to plan,
Sure.
and it's really good to have plans and goals. It's also good to know how to surrender.
Hmm.
The word surrender became very important to me when my life it came crashing down around me about, oh gosh, 12 years ago. Yeah, 12 years ago. And learning to surrender my plans. If I hadn't just surrendered and figured out, you know what, my plans don't matter right now.
Yeah.
Right now, everything's out the window, and I need to figure out one step at a time how I'm going to move forward from this, just one
Right.
step at a time. And by surrendering my own plans, I believe that's what enabled me to open up for life, having bigger, better plans for me than I had for myself. So I think the danger is, are we so busy trying to plan everything? And then I think you also have to question your motivation with the planning.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, if you are trying to check things off on your goal list so that you can put a picture on Instagram and show how perfect your family is, I think you have to look at what's really driving that, and what is it that is telling me that I've got to prove myself in that area, because it's not about being better than somebody else. It's not about one upping anybody. If you want to do it because you're making moments and making memories, that's great. But this comparison trap, not good. When you give that up and start saying, I'm only in comparison with my best self and what I'm capable of doing, you're a whole lot happier.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to your question. It's a good question. But I think it's, you got to examine your motivations and examine whether you're planning so much that you're not allowing any room for the unexpected that might
Right.
be great.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love the idea of one step at a time, right? I talk about this a lot of like, you can't do it all at once.
Yeah.
And, it goes back to you mentioning, stacking versus sequencing, right? Sequencing, you can take it one step at a time. If you
Yep.
have a big mess you have to clean up, a big physical mess of debris or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
maybe you're cleaning out a
Yeah.
closet, right? And you are trying to take things, you want to get your closet cleaned out. You don't just take everything out of the closet and just
Just toss it.
toss it, right? You kind of have to go through some of that stuff because you still have to
Yep.
wear clothes at some point, like
Yeah.
you wear some of the stuff you're going to keep, some of you're not. So how do you start, right? You start with the first piece, right? Grab one thing,
Yep.
then you grab a second, right? And you start to maybe make piles, right? And then
Yep.
once you have your piles, you can then, determine which ones are going back in the closet, move those back in the
Yep.
closet. Which ones are going to the donation, you take those to the donation. Which ones are worn through and have to toss, you take those, you toss those. But you do it in steps, right? You're not
Yeah.
with each piece, you're not going, okay, I'm going to donate this piece. So I'm going to stop going through my closet. I'm going to go drive to the donation center, drop it off, come back,
Yeah.
take the next piece and go, oh, I'm going to throw this one away. So now I have to go downstairs and throw it away and go back up to the closet. Like it's an insane way to clear out your closet, it's also an insane way to
To clear
live
out
your
your
life,
life.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
You take one
Great
step,
analogy.
right?
I just went through
That's
cleaning out my closet, so I can appreciate that.
yeah, I think I need to clean out my closet now, so maybe that was subconsciously in my head of like, "Oh, I should be doing this." But it is again, like, it is hard to recognize that we need to reevaluate,
Yeah,
right? But it's not hard to implement if we actually take the time to do it.
yeah,
And when you say take it one step at a time, sequence it, it becomes more practical. I start to realize like, yeah, we can do this,
yeah.
right? You don't have to block out a day, a week, whatever to get started.
No, I
Take
mean,
the
if
first
you
step.
can take an hour to just stop and think, it's
Yep.
usually what I tell people. Try
Right.
to carve out an hour where you can just do some self-reflection.
Yeah. And
And
that hour, I imagine, doesn't have to necessarily be sitting at your desk looking at a piece of paper. You could be
yeah.
doing it on a walk. You could be doing it while you're
Mhm,
driving. It's
mhm.
just time for you, this kind of distraction free time to relax enough to the point where you can see more clearly what
Yep.
you've been doing.
And by the way, one of the things I do, I have no idea what my neighbors think about me, but sometimes when I'm walking and ideas are coming to me, I will use my technology and I'll just hit the button on my phone to record an audio message
Right.
so that I capture those ideas. So you could think about, what do I want to be known for? And just turn on the audio and start talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can transcribe that and you'll have something to go from.
Right.
So that's was a big tool for me writing my book. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be behind your desk, but use the technology to help you. The other thing I would say, since you talked about cleaning out closets, and I just
Sure.
did that, I hired a closet organizer. So I think there's a lot of tendency to feel like, okay, I should be able to do that. I should be able to cook dinner every night. I should be able to, clean my house. I should be able to clean out my closets. Well, you know what? When you're working hard, sometimes some of those life hacks where people help you, that can really be good too. So
Absolutely.
if their forte is cleaning out closets and they are organizers and they can help you do it in a fraction of the time it would have taken yourself, that might be an investment that you could make.
Right.
Can they clean the house better, faster, and more efficiently than you can? Okay, well then maybe you do think about getting someone to help with that. Meal prep services so that you can get meals on the table. I'm not saying you should just go spend money and outsource your life or anything, but I do think that sometimes enlisting help can help change your perspective too. You think about, where am I using a lot of my time and energy that I on things that I really can't stand doing?
Yeah.
And is there a way to get help from someone else to do that? Maybe it's your children. I used to
Right.
pay my daughter extra allowance if she would cook dinner 2 to 3 times a week when she was a teenager. And you know what? She was a way better cook than I am. So we had better meals.
Yeah.
So there are some things like that that can help when you really do get to the time management stage. But I think it has to start with how you're spending your time and is it the right things to be doing?
Right. I think it's more than just the time management benefit of it, right? It's again putting your assets to work
Yeah.
for you. If you are more happy, more fulfilled spending your time doing certain things and other things drain your energy, if there are ways to outsource some of those things that drain your energy
Yeah.
to allow you either outsource or automate so that you don't have
Right.
to expend as much energy doing that, you can live a more fulfilling life, do more meaningful work, have more time for the things that matter to you, the people that matter to you,
Mhm.
by having somebody else or setting up a system that will do things for you that drain your energy. I mean, some people probably
Yeah.
love organizing, like they'll just go and, to them, that is a good use of their time because that
Right.
is meaningful to them. It brings some energy, right? For others, maybe it's not. And like in your case, it made more sense to have somebody there to help you organize your closet so you free up yourself, not just your time, but your energy, right? And your mental capacity to do the things that are more important than your closet,
That's
right?
exactly
To
right.
you. Yeah.
And I think to the extent that some of your listeners are entrepreneurs, I think it's really easy to feel like you should take it all on yourself. And thankfully, early in my career, I trained salespeople for this company it's called Insperity now. It used to be called Administaff, but they do HR and payroll and benefits. And their motto was, "We take care of your people so you can take care of your business." And as an entrepreneur myself for many years, it's so easy to want to take it all on yourself. And then you say, huh, maybe I should have someone helping me with admin or with social media or with, office management, whatever it might be. It can feel like such a leap to start paying somebody else.
Yep.
But that is a huge perspective shift because you have to be focused on what you got into business to do in the first place.
Yep.
And when you're
Yep.
so preoccupied with all the tasks, bookkeeping, I couldn't hire a bookkeeper fast enough
Right.
for me. So,
Exactly.
there's a lot of things where these things are burning us out and we're not necessarily doing them in the best, most efficient ways because we know we can do it. So we just keep taking it on ourselves. And then we don't know what our limits are until we reach them. And then we're
Yep.
wondering why we're so exhausted.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'm the same way in my business. I outsource certain things, and you mentioned like, do you want to give up control in some of these things, right? Or
Yeah.
losing control. There are ways to bring on others or set up processes to handle things for you. You can still set the standard,
That's
right?
right.
They have to meet, right? And then they meet your standard. Somebody you can bring on to do some of that work for you, so you can focus on what's more important to you. Again, like they say, the old saying of like, surround yourself with people better than you, smarter than you. Like
Yeah.
that is the purpose of outsourcing some of these things.
Yeah.
Is somebody can do it more
For
efficiently
sure.
than you, do better than you. You can get a bigger return on investment by focusing on something else. And sometimes that investment is yourself. It's not a financial
That's
investment,
right.
right?
Yeah, and we forget that part, and we
Yes.
put ourselves last, and that's not good. I mean, that's what really led me to a lot of burnout, is trying to give everything to everybody else all the time and not taking care of myself.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So I want to go from the serious to the totally unserious now.
Okay.
Time for our speed round, 5 quick questions, starting with, what's the first kid show theme song that comes to mind?
Kids show theme song. Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, if I think about shows I watched as a kid, I'd probably say The Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch.
If I
Excellent.
think about shows my kids watched, this is an old one, but it probably would be the Barney theme song, "I love you, you love me." I feel like that's burned in my head forever.
Yes. There are a lot of people that grew up on Barney for
Yeah,
sure. It was his own beast. What
yeah.
was your very first job?
Very first job was babysitting.
Okay.
Didn't
Excellent.
love it, so I, did some other ones as soon as I turned 16 and could drive to a job, but
Sure. Fair enough. Would you rather spend 24 hours at a toddler-sized T-Rex or a T-Rex-sized toddler? Speaking of babysitting.
oh my. Well, I think my initial answer would be the toddler-sized T-Rex because that might be a little more containable if I could just isolate the little teeny arms,
Sure.
the teeth, I guess,
Yep.
maybe
Sure.
I'd have a prayer, although it could be fun to have the giant toddler and run around. That could wow, I hadn't really thought about that one, but I'd probably stick with the toddler-sized T-Rex.
Yep. Absolutely. What's your go-to karaoke song or the one you would sing if you had to?
Oh my. I guess that would take me back to probably the first time I ever karaoke'd, which was, of all things, it was My Best Friend's Girl by The Cars, and I laughed because I was up there with a group of my friends, and we had had a lot to drink and stuff, so but we had fun singing that, so I don't know, that every time I hear that song now, I can just picture myself on this on the stage, so
That's
probably
awesome.
that. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't
Great song,
karaoke
great
very
band too.
much.
Yeah. Love that. And finally, what's the weirdest thing you've ever carried around in your bag, briefcase, or pockets?
Oh my. I suppose other people would find this really weird. I wear some very special contact lenses,
Okay.
and at any time, if something's in my contact, I have to be able to get my lenses out. So I have a plunger thing that I carry whatever the purse, I always have it with me just in case because it's the only way to easily get the contact lens out of my eye. So some people would be like, "What is this little tiny plunger?" But it's very important to me.
Yes. can imagine. I can imagine someone who wears contacts. I get that. I have never seen a plunger for contacts, although all right. Carol, this was great. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure people know where they can go next if this conversation resonated with them. If
Yeah.
someone's listening and thinking like, that is exactly me, like that's the tension I'm feeling. What would you like them to check out? Where should they go?
Well, I think the best place is my website. It's just my name, carolenneking.com. You can buy my book from there. Well, you can buy my book anywhere you buy books, but reading the book would be great. Men did interview for my book, even though it says women on the book. It is for men too, and I've been pleased with the response I've gotten from men on that book. So my website has resources. I have a legacy blueprint workbook that you can download, and it'll help you ask those questions and think through that perspective changing exercise that we talked about. So that's a resource available to them. And then they could subscribe to my newsletter. I give weekly rebalancing tips. It's not a sales message, it's just something to help you keep it front of mind and your awareness. And then I'm also happy to talk to anybody one on one if they want to talk about how to make a move when they know things are out of alignment. I do a lot of coaching work in that realm. So that's it.
Awesome. That's great. And the name of the book is The Rebalancing Act, if I remember
The
correctly.
Rebalancing Act. And then the subtitle is Wisdom from Working Women for Success That Matters. But like I said, I interviewed men about the women in their lives, but I also believe a lot of it applies to men as well. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. Carol, thank you so much for this conversation. Appreciate like how you challenge the idea of balance without necessarily like without shaming ambition or drive or any of those personal kind of things. You your work to me gives people permission to pursue success,
yeah,
but in a way that actually supports their lives, right? And
yeah,
so thank you for bringing that perspective. I appreciate it. And finally, before you go, if you're a dad listening to this and you find yourself in between navigating a season that feels difficult, head to gap2gig.com, subscribe to the Gap to Gig newsletter. It comes out every Friday and it's a quieter space to reflect on work, life, and what really matters right now. And if this conversation resonated, consider sending it to another dad who might need to hear it. Until next time, I'm Michael Jacobs. Thanks for showing up and listening to Gap to Gig.